her live streaming audience on Twitch. 662,000 viewers, 21,000 channels, literally decimated. 600,000 viewers now gone. Almost 20,000 channels now gone. Where did the audience go? Creators, what can you learn from these ultra trends, these big game releases? How can you capitalize on big games like Cyberpunk 2077 in the future? How can you choose the right games that can help you go full time as a gaming content creator? All of those answers and more in this episode. We've been doing this for a living for the last 10 years, so watch to the end to hear all our secrets on how to identify the best possible game to grow your gaming channel. This podcast is sponsored by Restream. Why live stream to one platform when you can simultaneously live stream to every platform to discover new audiences faster using Restream.io? Perrin, run us through these numbers on Google Trends and Twitch Tracker so everybody understands what happened with Cyberpunk's numbers. Then let's analyze this and get some insights for gaming creators.
Yeah, so Cyberpunk is interesting. You know, I used to study these trends, and 3 months was the average it would take from a launch peak to going down to kind of withering into nothingness again, back into the oblivion where no one cares about you anymore. And right. Cyberpunk has managed to do so in just 2 weeks, which is absolutely crazy for a game that was this hyped. I would not have actually anticipated this. I think in our previous episodes, we did say Cyberpunk was going to be a flash in the pan trend. It was just going to spike and die. But we did say roughly around 3 months is the average. But this one de-escalated and just died almost instantly. We were talking, in the intro, 662,000 viewers at its peak on launch day. And within 2 weeks, it was down to like 36,000. Now it's down to 20,000. And it's sitting at about the same number of channels from about like 18,000, drifting down to 15,000, hovering in between. So there's still lots of people streaming it to a dwindling audience, but the speed in which this trend died was a lot quicker than most. And we can compare that if we go to Google Trends, and we can take a look here. Just to get an idea, I threw Minecraft on the board, just so you all have an idea of like where the peak compared to something that consistently performs across YouTube, Twitch, etc. Minecraft has been consistent for years and years and years. If we look at Cyberpunk, it only briefly, even at its peak, it only briefly showed above Minecraft for like a day, actually 2 days.
That's worldwide Google search interest right there. And Minecraft is the #1 game on YouTube in particular. So with half of their budget for this game was marketing, and they were barely able to break above Minecraft at launch.
For 2 days, they broke above Minecraft, and then it just died from there. Now, there's a litany of issues as to why this occurred. The game launched with tons of bugs, which arguably that might have helped keep the trend alive a little bit longer, because lots of people were talking about, hey, they messed up the launch and there's all these bugs, and it got a little bit more meme trending traction because people were posting funny meme videos about the bugs in the game. But it wasn't excitement. It wasn't this big punch that they had probably hoped that their marketing team could create for longer. And once people kind of learned that it was a flop, I think a lot of people abandoned it. But not just that, we've talked about this before, it being a single player game is another reason why you had this spike and then you have it fall. I'm not sure if I can bring up Witcher 3 here to show that was your last title. It's the same, it's a single player game, but this is considered one of the greatest games. It won tons of awards, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure if this will show it or not. We'll see if we can.
There's the Witcher 3, that teeny little line down below. But Witcher 3 never even came close to achieving the popularity of Cyberpunk. At its time, there was a lot less competition as well. But hey, there is a pretty big spike there for Witcher 3. But Ross, this wasn't the only thing that affected the launch here. I mean, certainly the hype and the hype gave a good launch buzz. But then afterwards, I think that the decrease in popularity accelerated for some other reasons, don't you think?
Yeah, I think Well, I think one of the biggest reasons is I think a lot of what had to do with the launch of Cyberpunk failure is any other year, and I've talked about this like 5 times, any other year that this would have happened where a game that's been this hyped up for 7 years now came out and was this big of a flop, not talking about monetary, then, I honestly think that just being 2020, the shock, we're all out of shock. Like, this isn't as surprising as it should be. I think this is completely out of shock. The fact that PlayStation Store actually pulled the game, which is wild, obviously contributed to this. The fact that they're having to give out refunds, the fact that the CD Projekt Red, their owners, ended up losing their value, went down by billions because of this. There's a lot of other factors that go into this, but I do think that the biggest reason that we're looking at of the decline on Twitch probably is single player. And I would have loved to have seen that, because I think we looked at this before where we actually saw the comparison of how long The Witcher 2 was actually up there and how long that took the tail off. Now, it wasn't 2 weeks. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was actually a lot longer than 2 weeks, even for a game that when it was released was pretty buggy, as The Witcher 3 was. But honestly, I feel like any other year, I think that, like Perrin kind of mentioned, that the momentum of all the bugs and everything probably would have helped. But I think this year people were just so disgusted by it, by everything that had gone on, that leading up to this, it kind of just naturally died off. And it's a really, really sad situation.
It is. And so for Christmas this year, I got this F 2020 t-shirt. And this year has been shocking. And I'm disappointed. This is my most anticipated game of the year. And so what can we learn from this as a gaming content creator? As somebody who wants to look at upcoming games, figure out which ones are going to be big, which ones you can grow your Twitch stream from, which ones you can grow your YouTube channel from. What are the kinds of games that are going to do that? What are the attributes of the games that are going to grow you? And so one thing that we always talk about is you can't get an audience on YouTube, on Twitch, on DLive, on Trovo, any of these platforms, unless there's a mega marketing budget behind the game in order to acquire new eyeballs towards that title. You have to ride the wave that the publisher is creating. In this case, Cyberpunk's marketing, let's say, may have been the most successful marketing campaign in the history of video games. They still sold 13 million copies despite the fact that it was a total dumpster fire of a game on the most popular gaming consoles in the world. However, marketing alone does not make a game have longevity. As we showed you a moment ago, Cyberpunk's popularity spiked and then literally was decimated, reduced to less than 1/10 after that. So why is that the case? Video games that are going to grow your channel, creators out there that are going to grow your live stream, are ones that you can make unlimited content about. And single player games have a finite amount of content that you can create about them. And what made it even worse in the case of Cyberpunk 2077 is that they didn't even put in all the single player content that they had promised from the trailers and from the interviews. They stripped a bunch of it out. They lightened the RPG systems. They removed a lot of the in-game systems and things that you were supposed to be interacting with. They took out a lot of the player choice they had talked about. And then on top of that, with the bugs and the glitches, the experience that you are showing as a content creator is one that's almost laughable, and it almost takes away the value of this game. This game was a dead serious, mature, rated R game that was supposed to be just this serious, beautiful cinematic work of art of a cyberpunk world. But when you are just driving down the street in this cinematic world, and all of a sudden your character is butt naked, T-posing on top of the car going, out of nowhere after you're, I'm not going to do any spoilers, but let's say after a character dies that you really cared about, or after you just dealt with an emotional moment of having to murder dudes or something, like, it just takes you completely out of the experience and completely ruins it. I mean, imagine playing something like Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, a classic, and you're just like playing your ocarina, do 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 do, and all of a sudden you just like T-pose and go, bow, whoop, 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 bow, whoop, whoop, whoop. Like, it would completely ruin the entire game for you. And so I think that actually took a lot of the buzz and a lot of the wind out of the sails of Cyberpunk 2077. It was supposed to be serious. It was supposed to be the most serious game you ever played. With full-blown nudity, full-blown rated R, blood, guts, and gore, sex, drugs, dystopian future, corporate espionage. And instead, you just got a bunch of sillies in the game. with like, I mean, there's like memes out there of the cars like suplexing people on the streets. I think that took a lot of wind out of the sails here. What do you guys think about that?
I think all of that didn't help, but there's a component here that you can look at as a creator, as a model for other games, whether the game succeeds or whether it fails. As so, how is the trend going to go? Because what we're looking at here and why we look at these graphs and these charts is trying to look at the data. Where does the data go? Where does the search interest go, and why? And can you predict that for another trend? That way, as a creator, can you leverage it, right? And Cyberpunk and CD Projekt Red's games in general, Witcher 3 was this way. They're very story based. They're normally very well written. So I think gamers were hyped up to consume a really, really good voice acted, story driven game. Now there was supposed to be a lot of other stuff in the game, which what you're talking about here, but that being the main component that we're all kind of relying on being here. And the thing about those games as a creator is it gets less viewers because the viewers, if they decide that they actually want to consume the story and they want to play through themselves, they can't watch a stream. They can't watch YouTube content because it will spoil the story.
It ruins the content.
They have to not watch creators. They have to not watch that type of content. And I found myself doing this specifically because I planned on playing it. So normally I would watch my favorite creators, play the game and play through, and it would be great. But for this one, I sat out from watching any content because I didn't want the story to be spoiled. Think about that for a second. A amazingly well story-driven game means that your viewers and viewers in general across all gamers are going to be more inclined to not watch you play through something that is a story-based thing. They're going to not watch you if you're a streamer just playing through the story. They might be looking for like tips on how to solve some bug issues, or like maybe they'll be looking for some builds. Probably not. But maybe they're looking for like quick fixes or how to optimize the game on PC. But they're not going to be wanting to watch story-driven content.
Yeah, streams don't make sense. But what you're describing is more of like a YouTube video search. Like if you created a video that solves those problems for people, builds, bugs, solves, and that type of thing, that's a bit more of a video rather than a stream, which makes this a terrible streaming game, which is another reason why these numbers on Twitch are so horrible. They lost 600,000 concurrent viewers in less than a week, dude. I mean, for all the reasons you're describing.
I mean, that's exactly what I'm trying to get to is it's not a good streaming game because mainly erase all the other issues. It's a primarily story-driven game that people want to experience that story for themselves. Therefore, they're not going to watch live streams. That's my point.
Okay, so now that we're close to 3 weeks after the launch, we've seen that 600,000 drop in viewers on Twitch. We know about the buggy launch. We know all of that now. We've done past episodes rather on ways that you can develop a strategy around Cyberpunk if you must. Now that we've seen that was obviously before the launch, we know that the single player aspect of this game isn't going to work. Now let's move ahead to the future here and let's look at the online player, Cyberpunk Online. Yeah, in the very far future, it could be a year. After this, it could be 2 or 3 years before. Is there, after seeing what has happened with this launch, we've seen games where they've done this before. We've seen No Man's Sky. We've seen, I think it was Final Fantasy 14, that these games have awful launches and then rebound over the coming years. So looking towards the future, especially when the online multiplayer mode launches, is it even going to be worth it at that point? Is it going to be worth it to do any kind of targeting towards? Okay, it is. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. It is. It's totally. And here's how. So everybody's always focused on the game itself once it's out. No. So Cyberpunk, as we saw from all the numbers, people just want to know what it's going to be in the future. And so that's where the content opportunity is. So making content right now, content creators out there that are watching, if you want to grow a Cyberpunk channel, make one about Cyberpunk Online. Make one talking about what we want in the DLCs. Make one top 10 things we want fixed in the game. Top 10 things we want in the DLC. Top 10 reasons we're disappointed in Cyberpunk. 10 things that we want Cyberpunk Online to be. Every shred of news that we get related to Cyberpunk Online, cover that and talk about the upcoming aspects of the Cyberpunk IP, the movies, the comic books, everything coming up. And then don't cover the things that are already out. The thing is, all the big creators out there, as we saw, literally every big YouTuber and streamer streamed this game when it came out. They're going to stream all the DLCs when it come out. They're going to cover Cyberpunk Online when it comes out. And the zombie hordes of million-plus follower creators are going to crush you when you try to cover something in Cyberpunk that's already in existence. But if you cover Cyberpunk stuff that doesn't yet exist, that's where you can break through. Because the hype for something like Cyberpunk 2077 is far more interesting than the actual game itself. So that's your opportunity, creators. Now, putting that aside, the only way I think moving forward, the only two ways moving forward that you can cover Cyberpunk 2077, the game, and have it be interesting are the two ways that GTA creators cover GTA Online, or in GTA 5 before GTA Online came out. And that's by making role-playing content and by doing modding content. And so as mods come out, it makes the game new and interesting. You can cover the mods. If you're good at role-playing, you can do role-playing content in the game and do that on live streams, and you can get an audience for that. But actually covering the game itself, the builds, glitches, exploits, stuff like that, that's going to get mined out. It's already getting completely mined out by professional full-time YouTubers, like the ones I coach. I'm coaching them on how to do this. They're mining out all those views, and they're going to absolutely crush you, gaming creators that try to break through. So your three opportunities are upcoming on Cyberpunk Online and DLCs, and then if you want to cover the current game, role-playing and mods. And that's it. That's all. That's the only opportunities I see out there for Cyberpunk 2077. Do you guys see anything else?
I know, and I wouldn't expect mods to get as big as something like Skyrim modding. Skyrim modding is a whole different scene that got big for different reasons. Looking at like The Witcher 3 and what CD Projekt Red has always kind of had a little bit more of an open access to their engine a little bit for modding, but not open enough to be like where Skyrim was. So expect some mods, but nothing like the level of Skyrim modding. And for that reason, you shouldn't have that many creators covering mods for that game. There's not going to be that big of an opportunity there. There's going to be a pretty minor one, I would expect. I want to address a question in chat from Almissa Gaming. Says, but isn't that a problem with every single player game? I'm assuming that was in reference to saying, people not watching it and not watching streams because it's a single player game and they want to experience the story for themselves. There's an interesting dynamic that goes on here. And this is whenever you look at single player game streaming that are story based, this is something you have to look at it as a creator is, are viewers going to watch this or not? And viewers primarily make this distinction based off of two things. Am I going to get the game or am I not going to get the game? If they're not going to get the game, then they're going to watch streams to basically fulfill their desire for that game. I do this as a viewer. I didn't want to buy The Last of Us 2. So I just watched my favorite live streamer play through it as a single player game. And now I don't have to buy it. I genuinely got the gist of the story and I can move on with my life. I don't have the time basically to play every single story player game, but I can rely on some of the best streamers out there to stream the experience for me. Notice I said best streamers out there. So are your viewers going to buy the game? Or are they not going to buy the game? With Cyberpunk, it's very, very likely that they had already pre-ordered the game. Therefore, you should not cover it in a live stream capacity because they already own the game. They want to play it clearly. They're not going to spoil it by watching you. But if most of your audience, or if you can determine most of the viewers out there are undecided, then it could be a good time to stream it. But only if you're a medium size or a larger size creator, because you're going to compete with all the big guns in streaming who are going to have a much more compelling experience because of how big their viewership is and because of their audience factor. It's going to be hard to compete with them covering a mainstream title. So for that reason, single player games, story-driven games at all for a new or early medium-sized creator are just almost impossible to break in on. You have to build up to a trend in some way, as AWOL is suggesting. You have to get in on the hype and the marketing portion before the mainstream big content creators come to it. And you have to assess, again, are your viewers going to buy the game or are they not going to buy the game? Then they might actually be willing to watch you.
That's fair. And speaking of watching you, the fastest way to get people to watch you on live streams is like the way that we're doing today. We got up to close to 200 concurrent viewers on our live stream today, thanks to Restream.io, because we're streaming on Trovo, on DLive, on Twitch, on YouTube, and Periscope at the same time. And I see chat just going ham right now. I'll pull it up on the screen so you guys can see it. They have a multi-chat feature here. As you can see, let me try this one. I'll show it to you here. Here it is. You can see chats from all platforms at the same time. Hey, everybody, you're on the screen right now, obviously. Restream is great because you can engage with people across all of your avenues. If we were only streaming to one platform today, like just YouTube, for example, we would only have something like, 20 or 30 concurrent viewers. But because we were streaming to all of these platforms, including Periscope today, we had over 200. So if you're interested in growing your live streaming audience like we're currently doing, we believe Restream.io, they sponsored this show, helps you do that faster. And Ross already dropped in chat our affiliate link and a discount code if you guys are interested. It's also in the description on the YouTube video. We see comment after comment right now on people trying to grow as a streamer, streaming to multiple platforms, and then growing much faster as a result. So as you guys start to gain insights from what we're talking about today, about Cyberpunk 2077, what did you learn? Let's tie a bow on this. What did you learn from Cyberpunk? So what we learned is upcoming games, big games, just them coming up in the future is more interesting than the actual game itself when it comes out. And so there's an opportunity for creators, for you guys to grow, covering games that are coming out maybe in the wild, distant future, and just covering all the news, covering all the what we wants, and all the shreds of information about that game to grow. And so that's one opportunity to grow. Single player games in general are huge duds. They are not games that are going to grow you unless they have modding, regular DLC, and they have nonstop unlimited content opportunities for people to take advantage of, to make interesting videos about and to make interesting streams about. Cyberpunk 2077 is probably going to be a quote-unquote dead game in terms of streaming until Cyberpunk Online happens. And so when you guys are selecting your games, you need to be first and foremost thinking, can I make an unlimited amount of content about this game? That's number one. And number two, does the publisher of this game have a nearly unlimited marketing budget to keep getting new viewers, new interest, and new people interested in this game so that my stream can grow and so that my channel can grow? And if the answer to both of those questions is not yes, then it's probably a dud of a game. Do you have any other insights you guys want to add to that in terms of how you select a game?
Actually, you kind of changed my perspective on how to select a game here, and it kind of just building off what you just said. You talked about how a dead game doesn't necessarily mean you can't make content about it. Well, I mean, essentially speaking, we're talking about Cyberpunk here, but how you talked about how you can take the negative aspects of a game release and go with what, top 10 bugs that you need fixed, top 10 things we need for Cyberpunk to actually be good in the future. How you can take a negative spin on a game release and turn it into great, valuable content on your channel. That was my biggest lesson to take away from today.
Thank you, Ross. Anything else from you, Perrin?
Sometimes you can mine out those dead trends to see if there's anything left, but I would argue a multiplayer dead trend is better than a single player dead trend in terms of mining viewership still. So I am saddened by the quick decline of Cyberpunk, but I think this is a solid lesson learned for all creators. Don't put all of your eggs into one basket. Don't put all of your eggs into one Cyberpunk. Spread it, diversify it out, and you be smart about what you choose to cover and what you plan in advance. And maybe you'll have a little bit better luck than those streamers who maybe plan really hard for Cyberpunk and are hurting pretty hard right now.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for watching. We're live with Digital Drop Podcast on every freaking platform, but the best one to watch us on is on Twitch. So look for Digital Drop Podcast on Twitch. Follow us there, and we engage with people that ask us questions on Twitch more often than the others because we like Twitch more, because there's no algorithm. See you in the next episode, Digital Drop Podcast.